Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. On today's episode, we have GoKey. We have two of the core members of that team, Craig and Jimmy. So, welcome, guys. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for
Hey,
having us.
thank you.
So, GoKey is very briefly on a mission to help everyday people access the wealth building benefits of property ownership. Basically, they're discovering radical new ideas to leverage Cardano's revolutionary blockchain technology to create, store, and transfer real estate equity and liquidity in ways never before possible by utilizing NFTs to tokenize real property rights. In addition to that, they're also forming a DAO for their community to invest in real estate, sort of like a crowdfunding concept, and also developing a novel approach for peer-to-peer property financing and transactions. Uh, their real estate NFTs may represent many types of legal interests in real property, including present and future rights to purchase, sell, occupy, options, mortgages, and also collateralization. GoKey is designed to help aspiring property owners build new types of mobile financial equity in the spaces found between renting and owning property, while also empowering sellers to confidently be their own bank. As a result of all this, by bypassing slow, expensive, and sometimes untrustworthy intermediaries, individuals and families can build and preserve real property wealth more effectively than at any other time in recent history. Those are very bold claims, right? So, first and foremost, the genesis, right? Where did the idea come from to tokenize real estate property rights through NFTs?
Well, I don't really remember. Do you remember, Jimmy?
I think it was because we could and it was cool now.
You know, I guess the idea for using NFTs, it's been an evolution, right? So uh, the original concept of the idea was really based around the concept of modernizing kind of these old school approaches to like peer-to-peer financing or kind of social financing, things like owner or seller financing or lease purchase types of agreements. And those are two particular mechanisms that I've been really interested in for a long time. And, it's something I kind of learned about by accident. Like I had been a real estate broker, but like you're never really taught like about all the alternative ways of financing or putting together deals. And I discovered that like an owner financing or lease purchase type arrangement would have worked really well for me in this one particular situation where I already owned a house out of town and I had like a fresh mortgage on it and I was a graduate student and I wasn't the odds of me going to a bank and getting another traditional mortgage at that point in my life weren't great. But I knew I was renting another place and I didn't really like being a renter again. So I wanted to find a way to like rent and, ideally have an option to buy this property later. And so I discovered those concepts, and then they've always stuck with me, always been interested in them. But I've realized over the years, a lot of people have kind of bad actors have taken advantage of people like in those kind of situations. And so it's really kind of given those types of financing structures a bad name in a lot of ways. And, when I started learning more, not only about crypto, but really smart contracts and like what could be possible with those, a light bulb just really went off. Like, if you can take away these like trust issues that are inherent and like kind of necessary in the way that people do these owner finance or lease purchase agreements today, it really opens up this just wide range of possibilities. And the longer I've been working on this and the more we've thought about it and talked through different things with different people, like the range of what's possible like just keeps growing. So our ideas and our and the potential scope of the project sort of keep growing. So we're always in this mode of like trying to stay focused on one hand, but also remaining open to the possibilities of what we can do with this technology.
And actually, if I may, build just a little bit onto that, you mentioned, uh, bad actors that are kind of giving this type of financing a bad name. And like I've, in my own personal life with friends and family, I've encountered stuff like that, like, lease to own, like rent to own type of scenarios. And there's something to be said about having something immutable on chain that can't be changed. Everybody can see it. There's plenty of times that I've seen these bad actors make changes or fudge things in their favor, and being able to have something like this that's just it's up there, you can't change it, it's plain as day. There's something very simple about it, but there's something so necessary, I think, about just the way that is that could benefit for this particular type of contract.
Right. I think most millennials and kind of the younger generations would kind of agree there's something missing to bridge the gap between owning a home and being able to afford to actually rent one, or rent an apartment with all of these amenities, but not necessarily get anywhere in terms of having equity in that place they live. And oftentimes we see with inflation and all of these cost of living concerns, especially here in the US, that oftentimes the rent uh, would equate uh, the amount of a monthly mortgage rate. And because you don't have enough credit, or you don't have enough for the mortgage lender to say, look, you qualify for this with a fixed rate, not an adjustable rate, which is a murky waters, right? It comes with its own clauses. It kind of feels like the natural evolution of things, as Craig said, especially if we think all the way back to Bitcoin and why that came out of, right? It came out of a terrible scenario with the housing market in 2008, and it was born in 2009. And it kind of feels that although that technology arguably has stagnated as a storage of value, a digital gold, there has to be kind of other blockchains to pass the baton to, such as Cardano, that can enable people to get creative and build other things and other use cases other than, Bored Ape Yacht Club, for example, with NFTs. Kind of go past that and actually have some real world usage. So one thing I found interesting when I was kind of approaching you guys for this interview, I saw on your Twitter, which is GoKey, that in Oklahoma, you guys had some NFT and titles and all of these different types of immutable things on chain, and parcels of land with actual signs on them where you can scan the QR code and actually potentially even buy the land outright using ADA right there. Simple, easy, you're along the sidewalk, and it's direct from person to person, which I found fascinating. So obviously, there's a big can of worms when you're using NFTs in the real world. What are some of the bottlenecks you're helping to solve, you feel, right off the bat by tokenizing property rights? And why should the end user care about doing this?
That's a great question, and I'm glad that you found our proof of concept interesting, because it's a pretty simplistic example, but it's a powerful example, right? Like if you can be standing in front of a property, I mean, that's just a small vacant property that I happen to own. And it's like, I was going to develop it, but it's actually turned out to be a good like use case for experimenting with GoKey. And, but the idea that you could buy that right there with ADA from your smartphone is amazing. But like, your question is a great question, because the first thing people always, kind of ask, they're like, well, that's not a legally binding NFT. It's like, well, okay. That you can't make transfer legal title at the click of a button yet, right? So, but what we're trying to do in some regards is educate people a little more about, what does real estate ownership actually mean? And, we have to remind people that like ownership of real estate is sort of a new concept. There are moving parts within it. And we talked about, try to explain the bundle of rights concept within our light paper. But what a lot of people don't realize is like, there is something called legal title, which is what most people are familiar with. That means your name or your company's name or whatever is on a deed, probably some sort of general warranty deed at your local county courthouse. That is kind of like the end all be all of like, okay, who legally owns this property? A lot of people don't understand, like, first of all, just because that document has been recorded, that doesn't mean that the title's perfect. There could be defects in the title. Someone could have filed that fraudulently. Like, no one at the courthouse like double checks to make sure that you actually own it. They just know the document's been recorded, right? So, you have to take the term legal title with sort of a grain of salt anyway, unless you have something like title insurance where someone else is sharing the risk that title might not be perfect. But there's another powerful concept in there called equitable title or an equitable interest in real estate. So you're in the real estate industry, you probably understand this, right? So helping people understand that there are other types of rights in real estate that are valuable that aren't necessarily recorded at a county courthouse. So like, for example, let's say you and I enter into a contract and I'm going to buy your house. You have legal title at the moment that you accept my offer to buy the house. I mean, assuming there are no like contingencies or I can get out of it or whatever, I now have an interest in that property. Like, my name's not on the title, but we've established an equitable interest or an equitable title in that property. And that's really what GoKey is focused on tokenizing. So those you can move around, swap, trade, collateralize, really do whatever you want with them. And without having to interact with the courthouse. So, at the time when that equitable interest is ready to become a legal title, like everything's settled and now I want my name on the title, I want to be recognized in the eyes of the court or anyone else as the legal title holder. Unfortunately, at that point, yes, we do have to go to a courthouse and record that. I don't know when that is going to change. Some counties are talking about putting things on chain, but that could get complicated. But right now, that's the biggest bottleneck, and that's the biggest legal bottleneck. But I think probably as far as our project is concerned and building a user base, like the biggest bottleneck is probably helping people understand those concepts. But that's something we can change and work on. We can't really have a strong effect on how counties record legal title yet.
Right. And I guess the last part of that question, so like, why should the end user care? Things are changing. Like, and in the most recent history, we've seen so many changes to the real estate market. It's a change that we know is coming, and we want to do everything that we can to kind of be some of the first to develop those solutions, because those are problems that are happening now that there's not a lot of good answers for. And I mean, I know I don't, I think I speak for Craig when I say that we think that we can solve some of those pain points for, like you're saying, like a lot of the millennials and the generation that's coming up after them. Like, who knows what the market is going to look like, and if there are some things that could be developed that could come of this to make it easier for that next generation coming up, like, that's huge, right?
Right. Yeah, you have to have a few trailblazers. I mean, I remember that the internet used to be a very skeptical thing. Why would I want a personal computer at home? I can listen to the game on the radio. Why would I want to, I can watch it on TV. And it's that type of thinking that kind of holds back innovation and creativity to be able to improve upon things. It's not always just if it's not broken, don't fix it type of thing. It's efficiency. It's being able to take creative ways to sort of crowdfund to be able to buy a property. So on chain, it's transparent that maybe you and a couple buddies own this property together, and uh, it's just a fact that younger people are more uh, open to holding cryptocurrencies to begin with. And as the years go by and this technology and this industry matures, for example, with ADA and Cardano, it becomes more second nature for those end users, right? They have the wallets, they understand how it works, they can hold this responsibly. And if there's an easier way for them to come to the same end result as the traditional means of seeking out a mortgage, uh, that should be embraced. And, I wanted to get into kind of the big elephant in the room, which is legislation and regulation here in the US. You have your company or your DAO based out of Wyoming, which is well known to be very open and friendly towards the crypto industry and innovation. Um, what made you want to take that move in the first place, apart from what I just said?
Um, well, I think really you nailed it. We do just to be, I guess, more precise. Like we actually have two entities. So um, the original business that was founded to develop GoKey is called GoKey Blockchain Technologies LLC. It's actually an Oklahoma limited liability company, which just happens to be where I live. So kind of path of least resistance was just set up there from the beginning and see how things go. Although we strongly considering moving that over to Wyoming, if not overseas, because the legal environment is so we're we're a little bit envious of some of our internationally based projects on Cardano and Ergo and everywhere else that they just have like seem to be having such a simpler time and just less of this like overriding, I don't know what the word is, like just anxiety. It's like, am I going to get in trouble for this 5 years down the road, even
Right.
though there's no law, there's nothing that says I can't. But is someone some bureaucrat going to come into office who has the power to drag me into court? Even you can't control who takes you to court, like in a public or private type setting. I mean, you can do everything right. And so it's just that legal uncertainty does create this cloud. And unfortunately, it's probably driving away some innovation. It's awesome that some states are leaders in innovating. Wyoming has always been a leader in innovation. A lot of people don't know that Wyoming was the first state to introduce the limited liability company in the United States. A lot of companies domicile there because they just really strive to be a business friendly state. A lot of people call it the Delaware of the West. But you also look at places like Switzerland or Dubai, and they're doing some really neat things there. But I was telling Jimmy before this call, I sat in a interesting town hall with a congressman from Arkansas, the next state over from us. He has a banking background, and he's also on the U.S. House Financial Services Committee, and he's the chair of the Digital Assets Subcommittee and FinTech and Inclusion, I think it's called. And his remarks and the way he answered questions in this town hall were encouraging. I mean, there are a lot of people in the legislature and in the presidential administration, and even within the SEC, who want the same things that we want. We want the U.S. to remain a strong competitor in the space, and we have a great advantage now, and we don't want to throw it away. So it's something we have to think about all the time, and it's a little bit of a distraction from the things that we want to be working on. But I guess it comes with the territory of being based here in the U.S.
Right. A lot of people are looking at Wyoming as kind of adopting the crypto narrative and being open to that in a way that kind of shares parallels to Nevada and the casino business way back when. Nobody lived in that state really until they found a bit of freedom and they ran with it. And maybe Colorado with their marijuana, and kind of trailblazing the innovation that the country needs or will be left out of, first and foremost. And I think that's a smart move, obviously. And I agree with you. It's really a weird time to be trying new things, because you never know what can come back and bite you, even though you're trying to do the best possible within the existing frameworks at large. And that's a shame. I think it's a real shame that we're kind of we can see it in real time. A lot of bureaucrats and the government itself trying to install CBDCs and trying to really, what would you say, strap down the innovation that can be for out of fear more than actual reason to do so.
Yeah.
That would benefit everybody.
Yeah.
So I ran out of my initial preliminary question. I think that's a good starting point, right? So what has been kind of the timeline of events? What have you guys done in the short time that you've been around? What are some of the major milestones that you're proud of being able to bring forward, such as the proof of concept? And what are the next steps that you feel are going to be the milestones for you guys to reach going forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. It has been a short period of time since we've been out there and been more active in the community, but it feels like a long time. And Jimmy and I and others who have worked with us in more like advisory type roles and things like, we're still in a little bit of a discovery phase for a few reasons. We started with an idea, kind of like we talked about earlier, of the things we thought we wanted to do, which, we have this bigger picture mission. And then it's like, okay, what steps do we take with the tools that we have now to make that happen, to make real estate access, and especially kind of the wealth building financial aspects of it that are well known, more accessible to more people. So there's that part of the evolution, just thinking through things. And then as we're doing that, the platform where we've decided to build, Cardano, at the same time is advancing, and like new tools from smart contracts coming out back in September, I think, of 21, and more advancements there, as well as things that are under development, like Marlowe, which is like, I don't know if you're as familiar with it, but it's a domain-specific language built on top of Plutus, designed specifically for relatively simple financial contracts, like exactly the types of smart contracts that GoKey would like to implement on sort of a peer-to-peer type basis. But then in that period of time, well, before smart contracts, but right around the time we decided to focus on Cardano as a platform, NFTs came out. And at that time, okay, you could mint an NFT from the CLI, but then NFTmaker.io came out, which is now in Maker 2 years ago. And all of a sudden anyone could mint an NFT. And then it's like, so our ideas on how to develop the product and accomplish the mission evolve, and the tools that are available to us keep changing and getting better and more accessible and easier to use. So we're trying to figure out like how to take kind of the best of all of that and put it together in a way that as many people as possible can use it. And with all that being said, we've also taken a step back and said, and I think a lot of companies in crypto are doing this right now. Like, okay, during the bull market, everybody's coming out of the gate with like, here's how in our case, here's what the future of real estate, here's what we think it's going to look like. Web3 solutions all over the place. This is the future, right? But we still have to, if we want to onboard as many users and customers as we can, like we need to be realistic about where people are, especially in the real estate space, because it's not an extremely advanced market, right? From a technology standpoint. So, we've kind of stepped back and said, okay, clearly some people get what we want to do and what's ahead and where we want to be, but 99% of people are still just not there. So we're kind of reconfiguring, repositioning a little bit to be more accommodating and welcoming, and having tools available for people who are just brand new to the space or not even interested in the space. So, for example, we talked about like the original idea being based around the idea of helping people do secure on-chain owner financing contracts, lease purchase contracts. Well, we decided, look, why don't we have also kind of this Web 2 product that is a place where people can come online and find those types of deals and connect with the owner on the other side of the table. And there's actually no really good Web 2 based solution for that yet either. So it's like we can establish that, we can build a customer base, start educating them, like not only about like some of the fundamentals of buying and selling real estate using these types of methods, but also start priming them towards like, okay, well, what is tokenization? Why would I want an NFT? Aren't those just monkey pictures? No, like this is what they are. So we're working on building a broader platform that can serve a wider spectrum of people, from normie no coiner to crypto curious to full on real estate, NFT, DeFi, degen, and professional. And the way we've decided to try to accomplish this is start thinking about what we're offering less like, here's one solution. Here's a smart contract you can use for this. Here's a smart contract you can use for this. We want to create all these different tools because some people aren't ready to use certain types of tools at certain times. Some deals may not require certain types of tools. Some tools may be frowned upon using in certain jurisdictions and not others. So we want to offer just sort of this toolbox of a lot of different ways people can accomplish their real estate goals without going through the traditional system, which, they may not qualify for a traditional loan. Or, in my case, like I also have a construction background, so I'm always looking for these properties that need a lot of work. So maybe you can't even get a loan for it if you wanted to. So there have to be options for people. And we want to create a range of options. And that's where we're headed now.
Perfect. It does seem that as you're developing alongside of Cardano, right? Cardano is not at its end goal yet. It's a work in progress chronically. And as you said, yes, you're correct. September 2021 was when smart contracts finally came about. And look at all of the development that came out of the gates since in under 2 years. 2 years from this interview, there's going to be more developments as well that maybe you could piggyback off of. I think of, there has to be creative ways where with the proof of stake model and people being able to get ADA, hold ADA, and get more ADA as a result of holding and staking, that idea of crowdfunding a property and being able to not necessarily even know the other people on the other side. If you were to develop a DAO and buy it between all of you and have a stake in all of that, it seems that, fiat settlement layers as well between ADA and converting that back into fiat so the traditional banks and other systems can kind of operate with that. There's going to have to be development that is kind of unknown to you guys right now to be able to get more of a clear vision of the wide horizon of innovation and kind of where GoKey can go. But there's never a better time to start, right? You can't wait for all of that to appear because by the time that happens, it's going to be overwhelming.
Exactly.
So I think your approach is the proper one. And coming from a real estate background, I think it's very important because you're able to firsthand deal with the choke points of the process. The parts of it that could be a lot more efficient, but just aren't because that's the way it is and has always been done. And it's no question that as things become more out of reach for the everyday young person, that as I hate to say, but as older generations do die off and newer ones grow up with this technology in their pocket, just like using an iPhone app, for example, it's just inevitable that these technologies get adopted into the traditional realm of going to your property appraiser's website and then being able to click on a link that takes you to the on-chain data. And I really believe that the first and most flexible jurisdictions are going to be the ones to win that race. You live in Oklahoma. It's not one of the states that's really popular to live in, but I can imagine if some counties were to kind of bite the bullet, accept a blockchain such as Cardano, and have you guys kind of market the hell out of some of these properties that people are sitting on all this data and don't know what to do on it with it in the bear market. It could definitely, how would you say, can foster growth and attract people that otherwise would have never moved to Oklahoma, for example. So it's really important to tackle these things because if nobody actually doesn't, we just sit around buying crypto and watching it go up and down, really we're not getting anywhere at the end of the day. So yeah. Jimmy, do you have anything you want to add to all this? What are your thoughts? Why is this such a passionate project, and also why did you guys choose Cardano in the first place versus any other chain such as Ethereum?
Well, so I came from the Ethereum and Binance space. That's kind of where I first started kind of investing. A friend of mine was in that space, and it's like when all those native tokens really started taking off, and he made a ton of money. And I was like, how are you doing this? Like, you got to teach me the way. So I, of course, degened into that and was far less successful. And like, there was just so, in my experience, I know this isn't everyone's experience, but in those spaces, it was far more toxic than anything else. And when I Another friend of mine was telling me about Cardano and the things that made it unique, and it's, the proof of stake over the proof of work, and all the things that people are doing in this community. And I hopped in, I joined a couple communities, Twitter spaces, and it was the most welcoming experience I think I've ever had in any of these kind of spaces. So for me, like once that happened, because I have a couple projects on Cardano too that I'm developing, and I literally took everything and moved it in, just moved it in like straight up Maxi style, dropped it all on Cardano, and I've had the pleasure of speaking with a ton of people who are high level developers in this space, and just hearing them talk with the passion that they do, it's I mean, it's hard to not be sold on the work that's being done. So I think for what we're trying to do, and the fact that pretty much everything that Cardano does is, I mean, it's peer reviewed. It's very seldom you see that kind of stuff, but the work and the people that are doing the work are very passionate about the solutions. They're always talking about solutions first before they talk about the financial gain. Whereas in every other area that I've been involved in, it's always about financial gain, financial gain, financial gain, go to the moon, what have you. But here, every single person I've talked to is that here's a problem I'm desperately trying to solve, and I'm going to do everything I can to solve that problem. And those are the kind of people that I personally like to associate with. So like when I first got into this space pretty early in like the Cardano native scene, I met Craig because I have a music background. The stuff I do here, a lot of it is music. Craig's big music guy, so we kind of hit it off. And he was explaining to me like the stuff that he was trying to build and solve for, and you could just tell by listening to him talk, like he had a genuine interest in fixing a big problem. And those are just the kind of people I like to associate with. So I like the guy.
Wow, thanks, Jimmy. I like you too.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that's
Get that
awesome.
out of the way. We like each other.
Yeah, we've gone back quite a ways and seen a lot of things develop together. So
Yeah. And what was cool, I mean, you were talking a little bit earlier, about some of the milestones. And like, I think about GoKey, like GoKey was one of the first projects, like, shoot, like I remember going on Muesli Swap when it first came out and native tokens were like a thing. And it's like, what is this GoKey thing? So, it was one of the very, very, very first. And there's not too many around. Like if you go to, oh, there was a site that everyone used to go to. It was called like Cardano Cube or something like that, that just had all the projects listed. And if you go there now, like it's pretty much a graveyard. Like there are a few projects that are listed there because they were all like the early day projects that are still going and going strong, like almost none of them. So it's
yeah,
another point of pride for me. Like, this project has seen, obviously we're, the way the market is going. But we've just continued to think of new ideas and hear feedback, and just like Craig said, like we're constantly adjusting. We're looking at what the market is doing, because we're not here to just like a linear, this is our thing and we're going to do it. We're here to create solutions. So if we see a problem that we potentially can fix or address, we're going to give it everything we can to see if we can do that. And I think that's what's made us, pretty successful in the limited time that we have been here, is just the resiliency and the desire to try to fix stuff and have fun while we do it.
yeah.
Because I like this stuff.
I think that's well put, man. Yeah, we were GoKey was one of the first 10 tokens on Muesli Swap, first stacks on Cardano. So I don't know. I'm pretty proud of that. It wasn't
Yeah.
like a huge deal, but you look at those 10 tokens. I know like Cardano was a big one at the time. They're rip, they're not around. So, we've taken a super slow and steady approach, and, we've caught flack for this and that over the years. And it's like, whatever, man, we're just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Yesterday, actually, in terms of milestones, almost forgot. our stake pool turned 1 year old yesterday. We just crossed 3 million ADA delegated and like just over 300 delegates. And it's not a huge number compared to some, but it means a lot because it shows that there's a lot of community supporting us. Like, it's not a huge number of people, but the people that understand us and understand what we're working on and see kind of behind the scenes what we're working on, like, they get it. And that keeps growing as we're able to like release more and more of what we're working on. And we recognize we're pretty tight-lipped about a lot of things we work on because we know this is like an enormous space, and it's already attracted. There are a lot of people who want to figure out tokenized real estate and getting this $50 trillion real estate market on chain. And we have some amazing ideas, and we're working on some amazing stuff. Like we have this side project going with title and title policies and title insurance, which is a partnership. It's not necessarily only GoKey, but it's very GoKey adjacent, and it ties in to the other things that we need to be pulling together in terms of kind of this toolbox that we were talking about. But so we've had a lot of successes. We have a lot of people who still really like us. I've never heard anyone say legitimately anything like who's like really mad at us about anything that we've done. So it's been really rewarding, and really glad that I chose Cardano to build this project on. I mean, I started, when I first learned about smart contracts, everything was in the context of Ethereum and Solidity. And, it just became apparent very quickly, like, if we're at a point sometime where people are making their rent payment, for example, using GoKey or ADA or whatever through one of our smart contracts, you need to know like kind of what kind of fees you're going to have. You need to have something more deterministic. You can't pay $1,000 rent and then pay $200 in gas. It just is a non-starter. And then the layer twos seemed marginally better, but it's like, what, let's not get in a rush and let's try to pick the right horse here, and who's building the most, probably the most sustainable platform, and I didn't hear about Ergo until like months after I was involved with Cardano, and I was like, that sounds really cool too. So, I think ultimately we kind of stuck with Cardano just because it does have such a huge community and just so much tooling being built for it right now. And we really need all the help we can get. So, but would really like to explore more options with other chains, especially Ergo. It's super compelling, and there's a lot of similarities. So, yeah.
Right. Well, Ergo and Cardano both have the extended UTXO model. There's a bridge coming out for Ergo to be able to connect directly into Cardano very seamlessly. So you can have wrap tokens and wrap data. I'm not a developer, so I don't know the intricacies of that, but I do know they're very harmonious versus like something like Ethereum. And you know what? Honesty goes a long way. Cardano is probably the chain that has done the best in community building, even before smart contracts were a thing. And it's interesting because you mentioned your stake pool. That is an interesting game theory dynamic that you can only really get in proof of stake, at least at right now, which is where through popular vote, you can be able to have an opportunity to have a higher likelihood to mint a block and actually mint ADA. And then also the delegators also get their cut, of course. So it's very interesting to kind of have that mechanism on that side of things, on that side of the fence with Cardano, because you essentially have a win-win scenario where you're both producing more for your wallets,
Yeah.
and for your goals, right? But with Ergo, yes, when the bridge is up, maybe you don't have to pick up and drop all your work or try to import it anywhere else. You may just be able to bridge it over. And we're small, but we're resilient. So, I would urge you guys both, to take a bigger look at it when that bridge is launched, which will be at some point in this year. Is completely decentralized, is open source, and I think a lot of developers will do the heavy lifting of integrating these two ecosystems a little more together, and there could be more opportunities there. I wanted to ask you about where what are the most frustrating aspects of trying to pioneer this, trying to push this forward, and then the limited what are the ceilings that you're hitting? You mentioned that you spoke to a congressman that seemed very enthusiastic. You work in real estate, obviously. You work with the property appraisers, and you look up the value of properties, and you're looking into the past almost, right? You have this vision for what you want to do. You look around and nothing is really being done about it yet, and partially that's due to regulations, and not having that clear regulatory framework for people to jump on board and say, okay, let's build around this thing. What are some of those frustrations like for you guys, in the real world?
You know, I would say probably one of the biggest challenges. I I don't know. I don't know. Frustrations feels like a strong word, but like, one a very real challenge is just has to do with the nature of how real estate works across the United States, right? So for anyone not familiar with the United States, like it's amazing how many people we talk to around the world who are, there are different meanings for like a word like notary. Like it's something different in the US than it is in some other countries. But what I've kind of learned fairly recently is that like probably a majority of countries have a centralized registry of land ownership and land title. So as you know, here in the US, we have 50 states, and it's not even administered at a state level, it's at a county level, which is a subdivision of a state. So just as an example, like in Oklahoma, we have 77 counties, and each one has its own land registry. And it's like a centralized, walled off land registry. They don't communicate with each other, and there's just no central authority. If you're a business, and you have, like, say you're a retailer and you have thousands of stores, like you have to deal with all kinds of different jurisdictions, and not only different, there are like state laws that dictate, like some states, there's like a handful of states where you have to have an attorney present at closing. There's most other states you don't, but there are other rules. And then within that, you have the county level where it's like, they may not have their own county laws, but they have their own customs and just general ways of doing things. And so, we're trying to come up with products ideally that anyone in the world could use. And we have some thoughts on a couple of products that we think can be generalized enough so that anyone in the world can use it. But, as always, it's like, if this is void or if this is prohibited where you live, don't use it. Okay. But it's really hard to think about trying to police the whole world. But even within the United States, like it can be challenging to come up, like, if you want to have an owner financing seller contract, seller financing smart contract, you have to sort of figure out like, okay, how can I make the smart contract in a way that's most compliant for most states, right? And on one hand, there's general real estate principles that are sort of universal. There's also real estate laws that are generally accepted across the United States. And then there's just general contract law in general. So in the most simple form, I could write a contract with Jimmy on the back of a napkin that says, hey, I'm going to pay you X dollars for your house in Hawaii. And as long as we have all the essential elements of what a contract is, it's enforceable. But, it would probably be a better written contract if it was written more tailored to either the state of Hawaii or the state where Jimmy lives or the state where I live. Things like that. Those are just kind of some nitty gritty types of details that are kind of taking some time to figure out. And I don't think anyone knows the answer. So it hasn't been done before. And we're truly pioneering. And I think the old adage is true. Everyone thinks the pioneers are great, but the pioneers are the ones that take all the arrows, right? So it's not always a great position to be in. Ideally, you want to let someone else break all the ground and, go Oregon Trail style. And when they die of diphtheria or whatever, you have an easier path forward to do what you want to do. But that's kind of where we are right now. So we're trying not to die on the Oregon Trail here.
Do you guys have any desire to kind of expand, not abandon the US, continue in the US, but expand into other markets once you have things really up and running, where things may, they may spread like wildfire a lot quicker? For example, buying apartments in Dubai. And I can't get over this idea that Cardano would be the perfect chain for this, because again, as you kind of compound the amount of ADA you can get, right, as you pool it together, you can essentially begin, if you have the right bags, so to speak, and the right percentage and time and the yield, you can continuously buy a property, have it increase in value, and potentially find a down payment along the line just through the 5% back per year, whatever the amount is of ADA, once you get to like a large enough magnitude of that, right? Or if you're a stake pool, for example, and we start implementing those and see that transfer over into property ownership, maybe, I don't know, refinance it, take out the equity, put it back in ADA so you could get more. There's a lot of interesting dynamics there. And ultimately, it would help to bring about new individual and groups of owners, of home ownership and commercial ownership, which is, is astronomically more expensive than just buying a single house. So if in my experience in real estate, if you want to pitch an idea towards a good plaza, they tend to be humongous. They tend to have a lot of anchor tenants that are well known, and they tend to be owned by REITs or corporations. And you have to go through the receptionists and up, through the upper levels of management in order to get to any key decision makers. And it's stifling, right? It's a closed club. So I couldn't agree more that building that type of vision on Cardano can really empower individuals. And like you said, the community there is so welcoming that, it's something that can really bring about exposure quicker. And you kind of alluded to a lot of the native tokens maybe falling off. The fact that you guys are still around and still building is very admirable, and hopefully, it's gaining traction also in that community as well. So anyway, my question, going back to the original question, do you have any dreams, I should say, or aspirations to expand into other markets once you get a foothold in what you're doing in the US domestically?
Yeah. So You raised some good points there, and I want to be pretty clear. Like I mentioned earlier, we have like two legal entities, right? So GoKey blockchain, the platform, like where two people, hopefully in the future, of course, like two people in Australia, like want to enter into a seller financing arrangement, in their own hometown, and they can use GoKey and tokenize the property however they want to, following certain general structures, but their real estate is practiced pretty similarly in Australia as it is to the US, as in a lot of like former British colonies. They all have sort of the same common law basis of property ownership and things, but parts of Asia and other parts of the world are totally different. But of course, we would love to have a platform for those people anywhere in the world to be able to interact peer to peer. Now, the other aspect, that we've introduced is the DAO and the investment DAO. And so, where one part is a platform where people interact peer to peer, really with the idea of like, this is one house. It's not fractionalized in any kind of way. It's just, hey, this is a house I want to live in, that I want to buy and live in with my family, or a small business, something like that. We're not really, there are a lot of projects out there that are interested in tokenizing single family homes and splitting them up into 1,000 tokens, security tokens, or NFTs, or however they want to do it, and selling those to investors at $100, $1,000 a pop, whatever. That's not really our jam, because we like that model, but for like commercial properties and properties that normal people and families aren't going to buy anyway. So I think like once you start tokenizing a single family home, you're kind of adding to the problem we're trying to solve. Like you're taking this home that someone's family could start living in and building equity in, and you're just it's a rental owned by a bunch of faceless, nameless investors, right? So that's why we wanted to create this DAO, because there is a lot of demand for securitized, fractionalized property investment. And we recognize that. I have some background in that before I got interested in building GoKey, so I totally get it. And we want to offer those kind of solutions too. And kind of the original concept of the DAO was like, okay, we have this DAO. Maybe the DAO owns the stake pool, which is actually how we started thinking about doing a pool in the first place, where like everyone contributes to the pool and the rewards are used to pay for the property. So owners of the pool, earn a pro rata share of the rents or whatever. We weren't really ready to do that. So we're like, well, let's just run the stake pool. We ended up running it as an ISBO, as a little bit of a fundraising mechanism to help us get to where we are here today. But that was the general idea. But also the powerful concept of the DAO is like members of the DAO can say, hey, I live in Switzerland and here's this sweet ski chalet, and I want to propose to the DAO that the DAO buys this chalet and we split it up this way. Here are all the photos of it. Here's property information. Sort of like not too different from how you would put together like a normal offering memorandum for an investment property. Only it's different because the members of the DAO, theoretically at least, all have a more active role in managing the property. So it's less like a security and just more of like a community-owned property. So it's fundamentally different from like, a REIT or a more traditional like syndication type offering where you have one or two general partners. Like hey, we're putting in a little bit of money, but we're putting the deal together. We're going to manage it. We're hiring a management company. We're taking care of
Hmm.
everything. All you do is give the money. You're a limited partner. You have limited liability, all of that. So that's kind of where it's different. But same as the GoKey platform, the peer-to-peer platform, the investment side of GoKey, of course, we would love that to be uh, global as well, because we have the rise of global citizens and digital nomads, and how rad could it be to like be a member of this DAO where maybe you're putting some money or crypto or funds in, but a lot of your stake in the DAO is derived from what you've put into the pool. So you keep your principal there, and the rewards help pay for these properties, and they could be all over the world. And then you could have like tokenized, essentially like an occupancy token that you can spend some time in the US, you can spend some time in Switzerland, you can spend some time in Australia. So, yeah, that's definitely a broader, longer term vision. But, it all starts with figuring out how do you create these types of tokens in a way to help facilitate doing things like that in the future.
Right. Yeah, with the concept of globalization, and I don't want to be a pessimist, right? Living in the US and being born and raised here, but with the inflation and the money printing and the unfounded justification or voting for those things to happen in the first place that end up biting you back in the butt anyway, that we've seen from the pandemic, especially. And like you said, digital nomad is a very interesting type of emerging, remote workforce that is really taking hold around the world. And, you know, dealing in these fiat currencies is so stifling in some ways because you can see over there right now with kind of that block of Russia and China, and now they're okay. We're dropping the U.S. dollar. We're going to do all our financials in the Chinese yuan. It's like we're ditching Cardano. We're going to Ethereum. It's such a closed off environment. And then you have the middleman with the exchange rates. It feels very archaic, is what I'm getting at. And
Yeah.
to have a universally accepted currency or multiple, right? Because I personally believe the future is multi-chain, right? It's not going to be one ring to rule them all, as much as the Bitcoin maxis like to kind of allude to. I think it's very important that we start having these types of discussions because ultimately, if it's not GoKey, if it's not somebody else, these pieces are just going to be sitting in front of people at some point, and somebody's going to pick them up and run with them. And unfortunately, that also means the Oregon Trail pioneers also have to trek. They have to trek and they have to, make settlements in that regard. So I think it's very interesting what you're doing. As much as I love Ergo, I can see many of the benefits of you guys planning your routes at least first in Cardano. Uh, Obviously, with the ISPO and the stake pools and just how the proof of stake model functions in general. It seems very, very intuitive to build there. And, you know, uh, we all look forward to what you guys are going to bring in the future. I've been following your developments, like I said, for over a year now, and you guys are still there and holding strong. And you're constantly, getting involved in the communities over there. I see you guys in Twitter chats, spaces, I should say. And I think as Cardano evolves and as these bridges with Ergo as well evolve, you guys are going to be in a great position to take the vision and really take it from proof of concept and all of these amazing ideas and be able to implement it, as well as when the regulatory framework makes it clear to where your eggs are going to be in the basket, right? So, Jimmy, talk to me, man. What do you think? What do you think is going to be exciting for you guys going forward as we wrap up?
Oh, so what's exciting going forward. There's a lot of exciting stuff going forward. Uh, a lot of it, like Craig said, we have to kind of keep a little closed lip on, because like there's some really what I would consider unique things, and it's fun for me because like I get to help develop all of this stuff. And you know, I'm more like, my profession was in sales and business management. And I did actually, there was a time where I wanted to be in real estate. I just never got there. But it's been amazing kind of learning all of there's just so much. It goes so deep. The rabbit hole of real estate and property and all of that stuff is deeper than I ever thought. And you know, I'm really excited now more than ever, because we actually have people coming to us and saying, "Hey, I have a problem. Do you think this is something that GoKey can help with?" And then Craig and I can sit down at, you know, any hour of the night and just hammer away at potential solutions. And we've had a couple so far that have been damn cool, like really, really neat stuff, so that when we bring to these people, they look at, and for someone to just go, "Holy crap, like amazing work. Like I love this. Like let's start building off of this." Like that's exciting to me, because that went from someone has a problem and they've had a problem for a while, and they just caught us at some point in our timeline and hit us up and said like, "Hey, do you think this is something that you could solve for?" And I think the thing that makes us the most resilient is we're not bound by anyone else. We're bound by like what our abilities are. You know, it's not someone saying, "Hey, you have to do this," where a lot of projects are, you know, they have this roadmap and they have this community that's like hammering like for like, "Hey, we want this, we want this, we want this." And we're fortunate in the sense that we can do so many different things. Like GoKey's not a linear path. It's a tree, and the branches are pretty much endless in what we can do and what we can solve for. So for me, like, unfortunately, I can't talk too much about it. But like the stuff that
project.
What's that?
Are you talking about the project in Mexico? Or one of the other top secret projects?
Yeah, that one. And yeah, you know, the other one. But it's really cool to be able to like start from literally zero, and like, let's start building this out, and we can do it at our own pace. We can do it so that we know we're getting it right. You know, we don't have to, you know, it's one of the benefits of developing in a bear market. Like no one's expecting all these crazy things out of you, but we're doing all those crazy things right now, so that when the market turns, we're going to have I think, a pretty robust amount of things that we'll be able to share with the community to show that we haven't just been sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so we have you've seen our website at GoKey.network, but we're building an entirely new website that will be kind of our hub for everything else that we do going forward. And you may have seen we have a couple pages that are visible, you know, that we tweeted about in that proof of concept. But it's every time we do have a good opportunity where it's like, okay, this is something cool, some cool progress we can share. I mean, our core community gets excited and other people start to take notice. And we have a lot more where all of that came from. And we're just trying to be patient and, you know, make sure we're getting it right and staying within whatever they're trying to say the laws might be. You know, we understand what the current laws are. We understand, probably more importantly, the spirit and intent of the laws, and we agree with what those are. And so we try to go forward in that kind of way. So, you know, like you said earlier, we're innovators at heart. Like Jimmy, the stuff he's doing with Six City and Noom and InMaker, I mean, it's all groundbreaking, innovative stuff. And we have that same pioneering spirit here at GoKey, and we're not going to let, you know, fear of something that could or could not happen just make us sit around and just not do anything while, you know, just wait and see if it works out. Like I don't think that's what winners do.
Right. I'd rather start developing something and then find out that it's not a good fit than never even try it in the first place.
Exactly.
I think that's a good ending comment to conclude with. I want to thank you both, gentlemen, for your efforts and for obviously making the time to do this interview when all of us could be doing something else on a Friday night, to be honest. So uh, I wish you guys the best of luck. I'll keep obviously up to date with what's going on, and it's nice to meet both of you first of all, right? And I will put links in the description for you guys to check out their Twitter, websites. You guys mentioned to me that you're gonna be revamping your light paper, and obviously there's future developments that you guys are alluding to here. So I would highly recommend if you're in the Ergo echo chamber. I keep trying to advocate for this. Try to branch out. You're going to have to meet your Cardanian neighbors soon enough with the bridge anyway. So start looking at what's possible on the other side of the fence. And yeah, please support them. And if you have an idea, don't shy away from the lack of certainty about things. That's kind of how life in general functions. So thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Great meeting you, and keep up the great work, man. Since I've been introduced to your videos, man, I've watched a few, and you're a good interviewer, and you ask good, thoughtful questions, and that's important. We need more of you.
Many more.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about switching to this next crypto will 100x and with the little bar graph and all that. I know, yeah.
Oh no. No.
Because the algorithm favors it.
The cringe thumbnails.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. And thank you all for watching as well. So I'll see you guys in the next one. And again, please check the description, check out GoKey right now.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
See ya.